It'll be the PJ Walker show on Sunday for the Panthers. It also represents an opportunity for Carolina to gain some sort of momentum under new interim head coach Steve Wilks. We'll talk about that here on this Locked On Panthers Friday Mailbag Edition.
You are Locked On Panthers, your daily Carolina Panthers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome into another edition of the Locked On Panthers podcast, a part of the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, as always, Julian Council, talking Carolina Panthers with you every Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. Your team every day. That's what we do here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Make sure to watch the show and subscribe to our show over on our Locked On Panthers YouTube channel. You can also check us out wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. Just be sure to rate, review, and subscribe to the show so you don't miss a single episode. And be sure to follow me, Julian Council, on Twitter at Julian Council, where every single Friday, like today, I answer your weekly Friday mailbag questions. Participate in next Friday's edition of the weekly Friday mailbag, either at me or DM me on Twitter at Julian Council. Today's episode of Locked On Panthers is brought to you by LinkedIn. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedonnfl. Going to get to your mailbag questions here shortly, but before I do that, just some quick thoughts. It's going to be PJ Walker, it looks like, on Sunday. Baker Mayfield. There was some talk on Wednesday from the interim head coach here in Carolina, Steve Wilks, that Mayfield possibly could play on Sunday, but considering he's been in a boot since Monday when Matt Rule was fired, and he was in a boot again on Thursday, hard to see Baker Mayfield playing on Sunday afternoon. And two, the guy, he hasn't practiced. He's been terrible all season long. Why would we even need to see him at this point in time in that game? As I've said, we don't need to see Baker Mayfield the rest of the year. Scott Fitter has already done a terrible job of taking care of the Carolina Panthers draft picks. They only have their first, second, I believe, fourth, or fifth, and sixth next year. No, fourth and fifth, because the sixth is owned by New England because of the, I believe, the Stephon Gilmore trade. Either way, I don't really see why they would play Baker Mayfield at this point in time. I don't know what's really there to be gained as far as Steve Wilks' opportunity being a long-term head coach here. We'll see how it plays out once Baker is healthy. Same with Sam Darnold once he's healthy. But it should be PJ Walker. And my expectation is that the Panthers defense, like they did in 2020, shutting out the Lions, and last year against the Cardinals, they are going to do their best to make sure that they can uplift PJ Walker and offer him an opportunity to go out there and to win that ball game on Sunday. The one thing I know about PJ is he's going to run around. He's going to sling it. He's going to be entertaining. He's also going to turn the football over. So be prepared for that. They've been able to overcome it. The two red zone interceptions he threw against Detroit in 2020, and then last year throwing an interception. They've overcome it because the defense has been fantastic. Might need a little bit more from PJ, considering I think the Rams defensive unit is going to be the best that he's faced since being in the NFL, whether it was filling in last week in mop-up duty against the San Francisco 49ers, where most of their guys are out. And you can even go back to New York week 7 last year against the Giants. So the games he started, Lions defense is not the same unit he's going to see on Sunday in LA. Same thing with the Cardinals defense from a year ago. Going to be probably the toughest task he's had up to this point in time in his career here in Carolina's third career start. And hopefully he can get to 3-0. And hopefully the Panthers can be able to build some momentum. Injury report-wise, it looks like Xavier Woods and Frankie Louvu should be good to go on Sunday, which would be a big boost for the team. And then J.C. Horn, they're hopeful. Al Holcomb, now the new defensive coordinator, said he's hopeful that J.C. Horn would play. If he doesn't, that means a guy like C.J. Henderson really needs to step up. He has been a liability at times, having some really bad pass interference plays and calls that have led to touchdowns. So cannot let that happen moving forward. You would also expect guys like Keith Taylor to get an opportunity to step up and hopefully make some good plays for the Carolina Panthers on Sunday. So that's kind of my final thoughts there. I think the Panthers are going to play well as far as defensively. I think they're going to stay close in this game. I just don't necessarily think they're going to win, just because, I mean, what really leads you to think they're going to get a win on Sunday? But the energy levels should be intensified considering what we've seen over the first 5 weeks of the season, leading to a 1-4 start. All right, let's get into it. The weekly Friday mailbag here on Locked On Panthers. Again, y'all, at me or DM me on Twitter at Julian Council. But again, first follow me on Twitter at Julian Council to participate in next week's edition of the weekly Friday mailbag. Going over now to Steven. who has a Steve Wilks question. All three of the ones we're going to get to right here. Steven, Kendrick, and Jake, all Steve Wilks questions. Steven saying, Julian, I'm excited to see how Coach Wilks will bring this team together. Hearing his press conferences, he sounds like a leader and has the right attitude and confidence to come in and lead this football team. In my opinion, that is exactly what this team needs right now. Someone to step up, show confidence and strength, and give these players that extra motivation they need to play together. Also interested to see how this will affect the ex-Temple and Baylor players on the team. Your thoughts? One thing I'll also put out here, getting multiple different spellings of Wilks. I don't know if it's autocorrect. It's Wilks, y'all. So let's make sure for the next 12 weeks, at least, we start spelling Coach Wilks' last name right. So no E, Wilks. Just throwing that out there because I got a lot of people, not just Steven, a lot of people who are asking me question about Steve Wilks and getting his name wrong. So that's how you spell it. And we should know that. He's been here before, not his first rodeo. As far as how this impacts the players from Temple and Baylor, you saw PJ Walker sit there and talk to the media on Wednesday, and he understands it's a business. Is he affected personally by Matt Rule not being here? Of course he is. That's his coach dating back to his time at Temple. He's the coach that's given an opportunity to start in the NFL and to be here the last 3 seasons. So, of course, he's going to feel some type of way, but it's a business. And PJ now has an opportunity to be a starter. He didn't, honestly, if you look at it, Matt Rule is trying to get rid of PJ Walker. So I don't know if PJ Walker feels all that bad for Matt, considering a month ago, more than that, Matt Rule had drafted a quarterback at Brighton Baker Mayfield. PJ was the odd man out. Now he's here and Matt is gone. Guys like Robbie Anderson have been vocal about Matt Rule. I'm sure guys like Sean Chandler, everyone who's played for Matt Rule back in college feels the same way. I'm sure there's guys like Christian McCaffrey who said that Coach Rule never stopped believing in me. And I don't know how many people out there never believed in Christian McCaffrey or stopped. I guess there's plenty of Panther fans who stopped believing in him because of the injuries. So maybe that's something that would lead Christian McCaffrey to really be on the side of Matt Rule and maybe upset about it. I'm sure there's most guys in that locker room, I imagine, are not happy about Matt Rule not being there anymore, and they have place to blame on themselves. Maybe it's just kind of like coach speaking away, and those guys are just, being PC and telling us, the company line, opposed to actually maybe being honest. And I'm not saying that they're being dishonest, just you're not going to get someone out there calling out the coach in most situations. We've never really had an issue like that here in Carolina. So I'm sure they feel some type of way about it. Everyone in that locker room, I don't think those guys are going to let that impact their performance moving forward because they're trying to play for their next opportunity. Recognize that the dudes that are from Temple and Baylor are probably not going to be in Carolina moving forward after the season, considering the guy that wanted them here and had the roster control is not here. So they're playing for their next job. So they can't be in their feelings upset about it. They need to be ready to play and perform and show the rest of the league that they do deserve an opportunity with one of the other 31 teams in this league. Over to Kendrick, who asked, is Coach Wilks the right man at the right time, at least to show the owner what being a Panther historically means, and better yet, impart upon him who we are as a dual state community? I loved the social media video that they put out there from the Panthers Digital, and it's good to see them back getting their content they want to get out there and seeing Cam Newton in some of those videos. I know Coach Rule had a final say also on what was going to be on social media and how the organization was going to be portrayed while he was here. Steve Wilks just talked about, like, we got to keep pounding. Like, that is the brand here in Carolina. Matt Rule had the brand and talking about how being the toughest, most physical team in the NFL. All that, we don't need to hear that. The Panthers' soul and foundation is on keep pounding, and those words that came from Sam Mills and the people that have come through the years and have lived by that and have played by that. That's all we need. So I think it would be a little bit enlightening. Hopefully not too enlightening, because hopefully David Tepper gets it, but clearly he does. And if you listen to him talk on Monday afternoon to the media, I hope it's enlightening to him to see Steve Wilks and the way he carries himself as a head coach and seeing how an NFL head coach should carry themselves, but also to listen to someone who has experience here in Carolina when they had success. I understand David Tepper believes there was never any ounce of success before he showed up here, where they've been 23-47. So he certainly doesn't know a damn thing about winning here in Carolina. But Steve Wilks brought up how when he was here before, they went to the Super Bowl. They had guys who are all pros and Pro Bowlers and MVP and Cam Newton. They went to the playoffs 4 out of 5 years. He knows what it looks like, how to win here in the NFL. Matt Rule really can't speak on that, at least winning in multiple times. He's only there 1 year in New York. Steve Wilks can talk about what it takes to win in the NFL. So I absolutely think he's the right guy, just the way he's gone about it so far, just the message he's put out there. We'll see, though, on Sunday how these guys perform. because they still have the same problems they had back when Matt Rule was fired on Monday. My hope is they can, rally around each other and play better and execute, because that's things we've been talking about. These players have not been executing. Maybe that will change on Sunday with Steve Wilks as the interim head coach. Over to Jake, who says, appreciate the content through this tough time to be a Panthers fan. Thank you, Jake. In your eyes, what does Coach Wilks have to do these 12 games have a legit shot at getting the job? I love him as a coach, but he's inheriting a dumpster fire. Yeah, it's tough, man. His quarterback situation, it's not like he's actually down to his third. He's down to his fourth-string quarterback. It was Baker, then Sam, then Matt Corral, then PJ Walker was not going to make the roster. So you're down to your fourth and fifth string quarterbacks heading into a game against the struggling defending champions in the Los Angeles Rams on the road. I don't know if the quarterback play is going to get better. I don't think it can get any worse. So certainly it has to get better than what we've seen. They have to be able to find someone who can offer any sort of consistency or not be just as bad as Baker was through the first 5 weeks, whether that's Baker getting another opportunity, PJ getting an opportunity, Sam Darnold, God forbid, Jacob Eason having to step in. They have to find somebody. Scott Fitter said we need to find someone who can stabilize that position. That has not happened over the last 38 games since Matt Rule's been here. We need that to happen over the next 12 games if Steve Wilks can have any sort of opportunity to earn this job. I don't think he's going to, because I just do not think the quarterbacks on this roster are going to be good enough to give him the opportunity to get the job. Now, if he goes 6-6 rest of the way, I do wonder what that threshold and maybe that bar he has to reach for David Tepper to be like, okay, I like what this guy did. Because he gets 6-6, that means that's a 7-10 season. Can you really be all that upset about it? Considering, as far as when you look at what Steve Wilks did, because especially considering the issue at quarterback, if they can do that, maybe that gives an opportunity to get the job. So I'd say if he gets to 6-6, or of course he gets to 7-5 the rest of the way, it's got to be 500 or a winning record the rest of the way, I think, for Steve Wilks to get serious consideration. And if he has him in December competing for a playoff spot, then that could be enough for David Tepper maybe to be like, okay, things changed around here once this guy stood in and took over the job. So maybe I should really consider him. I just think it's going to be a really tall mountain to climb for Steve Wilks to be able to have an opportunity to actually be seriously considered for this job, especially when you consider how the NFL looks at black coaches. Just keeping it 100, that's how it happens, y'all. Steve Wilks, he's suing the league for a reason. You saw the hiring cycle last year. It's a joke. So I'm not going to sit here and believe that it's all of a sudden going to change. And David Tepper, remember, when he hired Matt Rule, he talked about all the similarities that they had from where they were from, how they dressed, having been short order cooks. He related to Matt Rule. Does he relate to Steve Wilks? Because oftentimes, no matter if it's an NFL head coach or out in your local business, people hire people who they can relate to and who they think kind of has that same vision as them. So we'll see if Steve Wilks can earn the job on the field, and then maybe later on in the interview room. But really on the field is where he has the best shot to earn it. Not saying he can't interview well, because he's already done that before getting the Cardinals job. Just saying, I don't look like David Tepper as someone who's looking at Steve Wilks right now and thinking, yeah, that's going to be one of my finalists for this job after these next 12 games and even the weeks after that once the end of the season comes. Okay, let's take a quick pause here, and then I'll come back, answer more of your questions on this weekly Friday mailbag edition of Locked on Panthers. And here's a word from our friends over at LinkedIn Jobs. These days, every new potential hire can feel like a high-stakes wager for your small business. You want to be 100% certain that you have access to the best qualified candidates available. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the right people for your team faster and for free. Make sure that you guys check out LinkedIn Jobs. It's awesome. Easy way to create a job post. Easy way to go find a job. I've done it in the past. And for the people out there trying to hire people, once you go out there, put your job post, make sure to add the purple hashtag hiring frame to your LinkedIn profile to spread the word that you're hiring. Simple tools like screening questions make it easy to focus on candidates with just the right skills and experience so you can quickly prioritize who you'd like to interview and then hire. It's why small businesses rate LinkedIn Jobs #1 in delivering quality hires versus their leading competitors. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedonnfl. That's linkedin.com/lockedonnfl to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. All right, let's get back to it. There's a lot of people wondering if the Panthers are going to start selling off some of these players to get back assets, because Scott Fitterer has done a terrible job when it comes to protecting draft picks. And I went over it with y'all on Wednesday, I believe, how a lot of the trades that he's gone through here have not really panned out as far as the players that ended up being drafted or how those picks were later used and all that. The Panthers right now heading into 2023 NFL draft only have a first, second, fourth, and fifth round pick. Their third and sixth round picks both belong to New England Patriots. Last draft back in April, they traded up in the second day of the draft to get Matt Corral. And we see how that's probably going to end up being a horrid trade, considering that the new head coach is likely not going to be all in on Matt Corral starting for him next year. And then they traded it back in 2021 in a move to bring in Stephon Gilmore, their sixth round pick, which was a surprise. I never thought that they would be in on Gilmore, but they were. And it was fun for a little bit, but not for long, as he's doing a great job in Indy this year, but he's no longer here in Carolina. And when he wasn't playing a lot of the snaps. And when he did, he ended up getting hurt, because that's just been the case for this Stephon Gilmore the last 2-3 seasons, unfortunately. So a lot of questions now of whether the Carolina Panthers might start trading some valuable players in order to get back some of these picks. Pedro's asking this, saying, I know it's not fire sale time yet. However, if it comes to that, what do you think would be an acceptable offer for Christian McCaffrey? Alec also offering his insight, saying, do you feel that blowing up the roster and starting a fire sale is a bad idea? I feel like the roster is good, but does have a few holes, such as edge linebacker and obviously quarterback. Trading DJ or our players or other players doesn't help us, just give us more darts so we can throw blindfolded at the draft. The best thing we can do, in my opinion, is reload instead of complete rebuild, and it starts with drafting a first-round quarterback and getting an offensive coach. We don't want to waste a good O-line we currently have. Yeah, so, there's a lot of layers to this. When I look at the roster, and I just look at the certain players we're going to discuss, DJ Moore, Christian McCaffrey, Brian Burns, Derek Brown, do you really want to part ways with all four of those players are first-round picks? McCaffrey is probably the first one that is not probably. He's absolutely the first guy that you're okay dealing, because he's a running back. Running backs are easy to find. Christian McCaffrey, good for him for getting the money. Bad deal, even when he signed it. Not even considering the injuries, but the day he signed it, terrible deal. Those have proven time and time again not to work. I still think Christian's a great player. I'm not willing to give up on. I'm not saying I want to give up on Christian, but if they want to trade anyone, it's him. What is a fair deal? When healthy, he's one of the top running backs in the league. I would love to get a first-round pick, considering he's been healthy so far through 5 games. I don't know, dating back to the last 2 years, whether teams would be willing to give that much up for McCaffrey, and Carolina certainly would have to carry some of his deal to be able to facilitate a trade, especially to one of those teams like the Rams or the Bills, who might be looking for a running back like McCaffrey. So I want to get a first round pick. If you're going to trade Chris McCaffrey, it's got to be like a first or second or multiple seconds, maybe a second and a third. You got to get multiple picks, in my opinion, if you're going to give up Christian McCaffrey. Now, DJ Moore, you just signed him. Do you really want to get rid of a guy you just signed? Brian Burns, you can fix his cap issues by extending him in the offseason with the 5th-year option coming up next year. You can basically just tear that up and just give him a new deal and, figure it out from there. And then with Derek Brown, he's starting to play really well, and you haven't paid him yet. They still don't have to pay him just yet. They have an opportunity to exercise 5th-year option come May of next year. They don't really need to do anything, in my opinion, with that. And you need to have good players. Like, you don't want to just get rid of these guys, and then your hope is in the draft you end up getting the right players via the draft. Because when you look at it, when we went back and looked at Scott Fitterer's trades, like in 2021, that draft class, Terrace Marshall's really brought nothing. Brady Christensen's been a starter. Tommy Trimble, okay, fine, rotational tight end. Shi Smith's been starting, hasn't made much of an impact. Chuba Hubbard has been okay, but not great at all. Keith Taylor, rotational guy who's going to get some reps on Sunday because of the injuries. Phil Hoskins hasn't really done it for me. Davion Nixon had the injury last year, didn't make the team initially, then was on the practice squad, was released. Now he's on the active roster. They drafted Kalen Barnes this past year. He hasn't done anything. Cade Mays hasn't been out there playing. It's not like Ike Ekwonu has offered, he's offered something, of course, because he's starting. And then you look at, Corral's out. there's not like there's a lot of rookies and in second-year guys that were drafted by Scott Fitterer that are adding all that much at this point in time. And Jason Thompson of overthecap.com actually did a little deep dive on Twitter on Thursday of the Panthers cap situation. He said as of now, they would be about $27 million over the cap next offseason after filling out the roster to reach 51 players. And he's assuming that the cap is about $225 million. It could be higher, it could be lower. But at any case, Panthers are the 30th ranked team as far as cap space goes, being in the negative. And they'd said that he also said that they're third in the NFL with 4 players with a $20+ million cap hit next season. I believe that would be DJ Moore, Robbie Anderson, Christian McCaffrey, and then Shaq Thompson would be the guys with that cap hit, because you've seen Christian, they've had to restructure his deal the last 2 offseasons. Same thing with Shaq. They restructured Robbie Anderson. When you kick this money down the road, you get in a situation like they're going to be in come March. Now, the Saints have done that, and they've been able to continue to field competitive teams. The Panthers, though, they haven't been competitive. They don't want to be in that situation like New Orleans is, because New Orleans is like, hey, let's keep our key guys together. Let's keep bringing people back because we're out there in playoff contention. The Panthers have not been in playoff contention. And Thompson said the best case relief would be cutting/trading Shaq Thompson, which would be $13 million in savings, and then Robbie Anderson, $12 million in savings. Only other players of savings are Pat Elflein, which is $4.75 million, but he looks like he's your starting center. So you're probably not going to get rid of him. And Frankie Louvu, $4 million. There's really no reason to cut him at all. No other player offers savings over $4 million. So Shaq and Robbie look like they're the most likely and probably going to be the cap casualties next season. When you especially factor in Brandon Smith hasn't gotten too many opportunities so far. We'll see if he gets opportunities down the road. But if it's going to be Brandon Smith and Frankie Louvu, those might be the guys you're rolling with moving forward at linebacker, and then having to draft someone early on, maybe in the first. Well, they're going to have to get a quarterback in the first round, but maybe in the second round next year, they go out there and find a linebacker that can come in, as you're going to lose guys like Corey Littleton, who hasn't done anything really, and then Damian Wilson had a really good game on Sunday. You're probably going to lose those 2 guys. You could bring back Wilson if you wanted to. There's not much savings if you don't, so maybe he's back and alongside another a rookie maybe in the second round. Thompson also brought up that there is relief if you trade some players. You can always restructure players like Moore, extend Burns, etc. But it would probably be a lot having to work with this roster into 2023 with hopefully a young quarterback and not a scrap heap veteran like they've had the last couple of years. So when you look at it, you can try and trade away. I just don't know if that necessarily garners the results that we want. Like Scott Fitterer went out there and drafted 11 guys back in 2021. One of them really has ended up being a full-time starter, and that's Brady Christensen. The rest either rotational, not on a roster, or just like, what a bad pick. So I don't look at it as, hey, let's get more draft picks and like that's going to fix it. Maybe they can find some cheap free agency deals. I don't know, man. I really don't know at this point in time. But really finding the quarterback is the number one thing this team has to do if they want to fix things heading into 2023 with a new head coach. Okay, let me take another quick pause, and I'll come back and answer the rest of your questions here on this Weekly Friday Mailbag edition of Locked On Panthers. But first, let me tell you about our friends over at BetOnline, as there are odds right now of who's the chances to make the playoffs. And currently, the Panthers are sitting at a 14-1 chance to still make the playoffs. So, hey, not as bad as you might have thought, but still not good at all through 5 weeks. BetOnline.net is your number one source for your football betting info this season. Find all the latest player developments, team matchups, news, podcasts, and in-depth articles and analysis on every game you can find. And as always, BetOnline remains your continued source for all your sports wagering information with live betting and up-to-the-minute scores for every sport out there. It's the fastest and the easiest way to check in on all your favorite games and events, including Major League Baseball, MMA, boxing, and golf. Head to betonline.net or use your mobile device to learn more. BetOnline, where the game starts. Okay, let's wrap it up, answer some more questions, then get out of here on a Friday. Now over to Alex, who asked, do you think the Panthers will try to bring in a veteran quarterback, or will they keep rolling with whatever combination of Mayfield, Darnold, Walker, Easton is healthy at the moment? So 3 weeks until the trade deadline. I don't know what quarterback out there the Panthers can trade for that's going to fix the situation that they currently have. Like, are you going to trade for Mason Rudolph or Mitch Trubisky? I don't. Those guys aren't good. I don't know what they can do. And the last thing they need to do is trade anything away. That's the last thing they need to do, is be giving away more assets when they only have 4 of their picks heading into 2023 draft. And there's still a possibility that Scott Fitterer is not the general manager. We'll see. you don't want to create more of an issue for potentially a new GM and a new head coach where then you already have. We went over how they are already $27 million over the cap going into next offseason, and then the lack of picks and trying to find a quarterback. There's just too many things you got to try and figure out. They're just going to have to roll with it. At this point in time, you can't fix the quarterback position. We've already seen with Baker Mayfield how not being here for a full offseason, having to split reps during training camp has hindered his ability to go out and perform well and really to have any confidence in himself and in the offense and what's in front of him. So how would that change at all if you brought in someone else? I know a couple years ago, the Vikings ended up not being a playoff team, but they traded for Sam Bradford, who was an Eagle. He became the backup. They traded for Sam Bradford. He came out and he actually did some good things for them early on, but that was like week 2 or 3 into the season. We're already past the quarter mark, and we haven't seen Sam in this new system. We haven't seen PJ. So let's see what they got. I don't think it makes any sense at all to try and bring in a quarterback, and I don't think that's even a conversation that they're having at this point in time. All right, now over to Aaron, who asked, now that Rule has been fired, how do you think the morale is? Do you still think this is a playoff team now that the team has a new leader? No, I do not think this is a playoff team at all. I thought going into the season they would be. That was me betting on Baker. Baker failed, so I failed. We all failed because the Panthers don't look like a playoff team. As I mentioned, BetOnline, our friends over there say that they have 14 to 1 odds to make the playoffs. Long odds, but they still have an opportunity. I don't think it's going to happen. It's just if they could even go 500 the rest of the way at 7-10, like that's the NFC is not great. Maybe that keeps them in the hunt. That's just not going to be good enough. The Panthers are going to have to go, I think, at least 7-5, get to 8-9. I think that's the best chance they have to make the playoffs. And that is a big ask. The Sunday is winnable. If they beat the Rams, I won't be surprised at all. I just don't think they're going to beat the Rams. And if they beat Tampa, I don't think they're going to beat Tampa, but they beat the Rams. I can see that. They can beat the Falcons. Denver doesn't look as intimidating as it was when the season first started. Seattle's not as easy, and it's going on the road to Seattle. Like they can still find a way to win some games here. I don't have a ton of confidence. It's the quarterback position. If you don't have a quarterback, man, as good as like the Saints last year, they had to rotate through and Jameis, then he gets injured. And then it was Taysom Hill. He was injured. And then it was Trevor Siemian. That was not a bad football team. And they were a Jimmy Garoppolo week 17 road comeback away from being in the playoffs. And they had bad quarterback play and a better roster than what we have here in Carolina. So I just don't see it happening, unfortunately. I would love for it to happen because it would be great for Steve Wilks. Maybe he gets an opportunity, or maybe he gets treated like Rich Bisaccia did last year in Las Vegas and still doesn't get the job full time. We'll see. Over to Jake now. He said, what should we expect from Ben McAdoo this Sunday? We see more aggressive play, stretching the field, or running the football more. I do think they're going to run more, just based on what Steve Wilks said, that to establish some momentum and identity, they need to run the ball. It's about stopping the run on defense and running the ball on offense. And that is the one thing that they do well on offense for the most part is running the ball. They don't throw the ball. So what they need to do, I guess the thing that they really do well is just not converting on third down. But that's not a good thing, as we know. But running the football, I think that's what they're going to want to do. They're going to try and tailor the offense a little bit to PJ Walker. But the system is the system. And McAdoo talked about that on Thursday during the coordinator meetings with the media, and saying that the backup's going to have to really know how to run the offense. Basically, he's going to have to run a lot of the same plays that the starter runs. You want to tailor it as much as you can, but it's not like they can completely remake the offense in a week to suit PJ Walker. He's going to have to fit into what McAdoo wants to do. Does he fit into McAdoo's system? I doubt it, because if Baker doesn't, I don't really see how PJ does, but they'll find things to get him comfortable. They'll script the first drive, and hopefully from there, he can get a nice rhythm. He can go out and make some plays. I'm not expecting it to be really any different at all. And one thing I did like from Ben McAdoo, because he was asked about, coming here and his feelings about Matt Rule. And he was saying that his job was to come in and to fix the offense. And clearly they didn't do it fast enough, because through 5 weeks, they're the worst offense in the league and Matt Rule's not here. But he said there's still a chance to do it. Like, they still have 12 weeks. He's not getting fired. Someone's got to call the plays. So let's continue to build some sort of continuity. It doesn't help that the quarterback, Baker Mayfield's out. But same guys are out there on the offensive line, same receivers. They played with PJ before. Let's see if they can turn it around. So I was a good message. I actually appreciated from him on Thursday. Okay, now to Chase and Corinne. Both had questions about Phil Snow no longer being here. Chase asking, how do we proceed after firing Phil Snow for defensive coordinator? As far as a scheming standpoint, he seemed to have been doing a good job, and his defense made plays and held up against some good teams, minus not being able to stop the run against Cleveland. Do we keep running the same defensive scheme since it works, even though Phil Snow is gone, or does Steve Wilks change some things? And also, Corinne asks, I'd love to know your thoughts on firing Phil Snow. Seems like the defense isn't so bad this year. Could this be a mistake, or best to just clean house and start over? A lot of this has to do with just who's your guy. Phil Snow's been with Matt Rule since 2013, dating back to Temple. When Matt Rule gets a college job, whether that's this cycle or next cycle, Phil Snow will be the defensive coordinator. That's his dude. Same thing with Ed Foley. That's why those guys are not here. And Steve Wilks said they had a change in philosophy, and he wanted to just move on. And it made sense for the two of them to do that because Phil is Matt's guy. Al Holcomb is Steve Wilks' guy. Al Holcomb has been working with Steve Wilks in 2013, back when they were both here in Carolina the first time. When Steve Wilks became a head coach in Arizona, Al Holcomb was his defensive coordinator. When Steve Wilks was the DC, I believe, for Freddie Kitchens in Cleveland, Al Holcomb was his linebacker coach. He's had a relationship with Al dating back to the same amount of time, at least with Phil Snow working on Matt Rule. So, of course, you're going to empower your guy. You don't want the guy who when you got your first chance at head coach to be your DC, that's the guy that you're going to want to elevate to be your DC. And if that comes at the expense of Phil Snow, so be it. It's the business. But you want the people that you have worked with before and who you know well and who agree and see the defense in the same vision as you to be working underneath you, especially when that's the side of the ball where you've been able to make your hay. So I understand it absolutely. And now Holcomb also said that the system's the system. At this point in time, like, we're week 6, y'all. You can't tear down the entire offense like with Ben McAdoo or tear down the whole defense with Al Holcomb now. You're just going to have to run what you have. The scheme is the scheme. And that's the words that Al Holcomb said on Thursday. So I don't expect there to be too many changes. One thing I do remember from Steve Wilks when we compared him when he was a defensive coordinator here in Carolina to Sean McDermott was he was very aggressive, a lot more aggressive, sent a lot of blitzes. Phil Snow did send some blitzes. I think we'll continue to see that, and maybe even some different looks now that Al Holcomb's calling the plays defensively and that Steve Wilks is taking over as the interim head coach. So there will be some changes, but really not as many as you might think there could possibly be with two guys now taking over. We got Eric now. He said, hey, Julian, just a thought. Let's say we can win a couple more games at the end of season, 7-10, which would mean the Panthers go 6-6 the rest of the way. Since we'll be out of the race for the top 2 quarterbacks, do you think we'll take a shot on Hendon Hooker out of Tennessee? Okay, Greensboro's own Hendon Hooker. I did tweet out at Julian Council this past weekend when he threw a touchdown. I was like, every time Hendon Hooker throws a touchdown pass, Justin Fuente, the former head coach at Virginia Tech, should have to give back a piece of his buyout. One of the big reasons why Fuente, I know this is not what you're here for. One of the big reasons why Justin Fuente is not at Virginia Tech is because he chose the wrong quarterback. He thought Braxton Burmeister was his guy instead of Hendon Hooker. Hooker goes to Tennessee, doesn't win the job originally with Joe Milton, the Michigan transfer. Then he takes over. Vols go to a bowl. Now they're ranked 6th in the country and have Alabama coming to town tomorrow. What a scene that's going to be at Neyland Stadium in Knoxville, Tennessee. He's been really good, man. Hooker's looked really good. He had a touchdown throw. I think it was like a 50-yard bomb last Saturday at LSU. That was just one of the best throws you're going to see all year in college football. Is he a guy that you're trying to, like, build your team around? I don't know. I don't know what it's going to look like. And Dan Orlovsky was saying, hey, like, he's going to go a lot higher than people think. I don't even know where people think he's going to go. Is he a first-round prospect? I have no idea. If he puts himself in the Heisman conversation and if he wins on Saturday, and that's really going to be the game people are looking at. Because I had some guy who came up to me or who said something to me before. Was like, oh, when I was talking about Will Levis and Anthony Richardson, the quarterback at Florida, what Levis at Kentucky, Richardson at Florida. And he was like, oh, you probably only watched Anthony Richardson against Georgia, when I was like levying some sort of criticism on him. It's like, well, those are the games the scouts watch. Georgia's entire defense got drafted last year, and he looked awful. Now look what Richardson's done so far this season at Florida. He still looks terrible. So these are the games when you play against these big-time programs like Alabama that constantly churn out defensive talent in the first round and early on. If Hooker looks good on Saturday, then we might be able to see. Now, he's running what people call a Mickey Mouse offense just from the context of Sunday where what Josh Heupel does at Tennessee would not work in the NFL, but it works in college. It's simplified. It would be a little bit of a learning curve. Hooker is a little bit of an older guy. I think he's 24. He's one of the oldest starting quarterbacks in college football. Maybe they give him a chance. But if he's a middle round guy, they already have that in Matt Corral. And if Scott Fitter was still here, then I guess they'd probably go with Matt Corral. But I don't know what they're going to do. I don't think they're going to go 7. I don't think they're going to be 7-10. It also might be detrimental. Not like I'm sitting here saying that they need to absolutely tank the rest of the season. I would still put them in the top 10. And I don't know who else would be there. There's always a possibility to trade up. You would hate to do that, but if that's what you got to do, that's what you got to do. It's not. I don't think it's as simple as Levis or Bryce Young or CJ Stroud all go 1, 2, and 3. I don't think it's going to be that simple. Maybe it is. I mean, when you look around the rest of the NFL right now, and I guess I don't really, where's my phone? When you look at the NFL right now, like, so let me look at the teams. They're also struggling like Carolina and probably on their way to the bottom or already at the bottom. Let's see. New England already has their quarterback. They also drafted Bailey Zappi. The Dolphins, I think they're good. Jets, they're probably not getting a guy. Buffalo, they're obviously good. Baltimore, they're good. Cleveland, they got their guy. Cincy got their guy. Pittsburgh just drafted their guy. Tennessee, they drafted Malik Willis. Maybe they might be interested, but I think they're probably going to win that division again. Indy, they're going to be looking for a quarterback for sure. Jacksonville, they have their guy. Houston, probably in the quarterback market. So there's 2 teams. Kansas City has their guy. Chargers have their guy. Denver has their guy. Las Vegas, to be interesting, they're 1-4. If they keep playing poorly, it's a possibility that they might look at getting rid of Derek Carr opposed to extending him. Philadelphia, they have their guy. Dallas has their guy. The Giants at 4-1. Right now, it looks like they have their guy. Washington needs a quarterback too. So there's 3 now for sure that are going to be in a quarterback market. Minnesota, probably they got their guy in Cousins right now. Green Bay has their guy. Chicago has their guy. Detroit, 1-4. At some point in time, they're going to want to bring somebody else in, but Jared Goff's not like he's really the problem. They have one of the top, I think they have the top scoring offense in the league, but they're still 1-4. Tampa, they're going to have to draft a quarterback at some point with Tom Brady, probably his last year. New Orleans going to need to draft a quarterback. They're 2-3. Atlanta, they just drafted Ritter, but maybe they find someone else if it's not Arthur Smith again next season. San Francisco has their guy. Rams have their guy. Arizona has their guy. Seahawks. So there's like 6 or 7 teams, I guess, that feasibly could draft a quarterback in the first round. And Carolina is currently in front of them because they have their number 1 pick right now. Washington absolutely is a team that you'd be concerned about because they're going to need to draft a quarterback in the first round. I don't know if they're believing in Sam Howell. And Indianapolis could be. So we'll see how it plays out. They go 7-10. That does not put them in the best spot to get their pick of whoever they want. I would love for that to happen because it means like we get to talk more winning days, but long-term is the best thing for them. I don't know. But if they are the number 1 pick, it's going to show that it's not just a quarterback, that clearly there's a lot of issues on the roster that led to them to be the worst team in the NFL this season. It can't just be the quarterback if that's what happens. Final question comes from Tanner. He says, what year will be the year when Panthers Twitter quits talking about Cam Newton coming back? Well, it's not 2022, so hopefully it'll be 2023. Again, as I've said in the past, you got to want more for Cam, but the reason why we keep having this conversation is the Carolina Panthers have never been able to replace Cam Newton when they got rid of him the first time when Matt Rule first got here. And that is part of the reason why Panther fans are still clamoring for Cam because they have not found a replacement. When they find a replacement, people will stop clamoring for Cam Newton on a daily basis. So it's exhausting, but unfortunately, that is the world we live in where people are still thinking that Cam Newton's going to come in here and going to fix things at quarterback this season when he has played for no one. Last year, he got a preseason. This year, no preseason. Has not been on anybody's roster since the Panthers released him or did not re-sign him. He's been a free agent. So no one's wanted Cam Newton. So why would he come in here and how would he change anything? You did see him play last year. This is not Cam Newton hate. I love Cam. Come on, y'all. Let's be better than that. All right, that's going to wrap up this edition of the Locked On Panthers podcast, a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, hosted by yours truly, Julian Council. Again, y'all make sure to watch the show, subscribe to the show over on our Locked On Panthers YouTube channel. You can also check us out wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. Just be sure to rate, review, and subscribe to the show. And be sure to follow me on Twitter at Julian Council so you can participate in next week's edition of the Weekly Friday Mailbag. Either at me or DM me at Julian Council on Twitter to do so. In the meantime, be safe, be happy, be whole. As always, keep pounding, and I will talk to y'all on Sunday, hopefully following a Carolina Panthers victory.